Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Wonderfully Made podcast. This is your host, Fifi Buchanan, and today I'm going to be talking about getting better at connecting. And the reason I'm talking about this today is because what I have been feeling and observing is that we live in a time where we're more connected than ever, but it also feels like we're more disconnected than ever. And one of the indicators for me is sometimes the lack of genuine conversation that can stretch on for days, weeks, and even months with different friends and acquaintances while we're still talking. We're still talking by maybe sharing videos and memes in the DMs of social platforms, but we're not actually saying, how are you doing? Is there anything you need? Do you still enjoy your job? How can I support you? A lot of us are just sometimes maybe too exhausted to say more or have limited time, and we're not able to have that full-blown conversation we would like. And so we use these little quick touch points, but before we know it, we haven't had a conversation of substance in months. And so it got me thinking, over the years as a child, I would always hear your health is your wealth. And I love the truth in this statement that if you take care of your body, that will have a big effect on the quality of your life. There's so much that's within our control that will help us to have a very rich and fulfilled life. But lately I've been thinking about how it's not just our health that's our wealth. It's also community where true wealth lies. And I say that because there are so many things that we need as humans that while money does help, sometimes money doesn't solve the problem. There's a certain deeper need that we may have that money cannot solve. Now, for me, my story is that I found myself laid off just prior to the pandemic. And I did my part. I was applying for jobs every day. I'm a spreadsheet girly, so I had a whole system for what jobs at what company I applied for, what positions, have I heard back from them, have I had an interview, was it successful? Just was trying to be as organized as possible. And in the meantime, I also did freelance work, which really helped me to stay afloat. But it still took an incredibly long amount of time to find a job. Now, probably that was because of the pandemic. A lot of companies that originally said they were hiring had to take back those job requisites and say, hey, we're actually going to be putting this on hold. But my point is, during that long time that it took me, I got discouraged. I questioned if I was in the right career. Some days I felt like completely giving up. But it was my community that held me up on those days when I felt like I could barely stand on my own. They listened to my frustrations. And when I felt like employers were just playing in my face, like there were some that were asking for basically free labor before even interviewing, I had so many people in my corner that I could talk to and reason with and just really feel like I was seen and understood. And the thing about community is it has the potential to expand. And so if you move to a new neighborhood or you get a new job or you join a Pilates studio, there are people who can be part of your community or your world. And I feel everyone plays a different role. And sometimes we want to call people friends when really they are colleagues, they are acquaintances, but those terms are not pejorative. Those are positive terms to mean they are people in your circle and they hold a certain role in your life and you hold a certain role in their life. I get that parts of life, they just must be done solo, but a lot of life is better and more bearable with friends. So don't take this as me being against memes and videos and thinking that every conversation needs to be a deep one, but I'm in a place of desiring to dig deeper and to have more intimacy with the people that I truly care about. So I've thought of some ways to build more connection, and I would love for you to jump on social media. My Instagram is Wonderfully Made Pod. And when you see this post up, make sure you add your comments as far as what you think helps to build connection. The first one is asking questions when I share a meme or video, like, hey, did you ever watch this show? Or who taught you how to drive? that's kind of a way to open up that conversation and maybe get to know people in your life in a way that you didn't know them before. I have a question that I love asking, and I say that it's a random question, but if you think about how the world's going, it isn't that random. But I like to ask people, in a zombie apocalypse, what would be your special skill? And a lot of people are very enthusiastic to answer, and a lot of people know exactly what their skill is. They're like, I can make a meal out of anything. I would be really good with directions. I'm a really good gardener. Like, it's so fun to hear the answers and to send that, message to a friend, maybe text message or DM, and say, hey, feel free to voice note or text me back, but this is what I want to know. And I think the other fun thing is it's a question that is sort of playful, but also lends itself to giving more depth. Another one is sharing music. And I'm not saying that this has to be deep. This could be an old song. This could be a new song. It could be a well-known artist. It could be an obscure artist. But just that additional personal touch of like, hey, thinking of you, this song made me think of you. Or remember when we went to this concert? Or, I know you're going through a tough time. This song really encourages me. I have songs that my friends sent me in college when I was struggling through school that I still feel emotional about when I hear, and it still inspires me today. I kind of touched on this one in my first point, but I welcome voice notes so that my friends can express themselves in a way that they see fit, and I can reply when I have time. I think the trouble with phone calls is that so many people have somewhat of a restricted schedule and lifestyle, and so they might not have space to have that longer phone conversation. And there's nothing worse than having a vulnerable moment, a personal moment, and then the person who is receiving this from you doesn't have time or has to jump off the phone. But with a voice note, you can get your thoughts out, and then the person may, they may have to go bathe their child, or they may be commuting to work on a train. Once they are seated, they can commit to listening, and even listening more than once if needed, and then replying. And if you have an iPhone, I don't know if you noticed, but the latest update actually lets you see the words to the voice note. It basically does transcription for you if you do the update. So if you're not able to listen, you can open it up as a note and you can read it. So I thought that was really cool. And I'm always thanking my friends all of the time for allowing me to be a listening ear and for them being a listening ear. And, hey, are you in a space to listen? I would like to send this voice note over. And I feel like it's so personal, and I feel like it's just as good, if not better, than a phone call. Now, the next one is we need to address the fact that this lack of connection, this disconnection, could be from fatigue. A number of ways that we feel fatigued. There are people who have a work phone and they're expected to check that work phone nearly 24 hours a day. They're getting notifications from their children, their children's school, their job, their spouse, different things. And so there is sometimes a bit of fatigue that people feel because all of these notifications and communications are requiring something of them. I almost think that that's why some people are terrible sometimes with replying to email at work, because they see it come in, they know there's an action required, and they put it off saying, I will open this when I'm in a space to look at it and actually do the action. In fact, it's also why I have so much unopened mail, because I know that there is an action required, and I keep saying, I just need a quiet moment to address it. And so acknowledging that very human sentiment of fatigue is important. And that may mean that we need to give all the relationships in our lives room to breathe. And you may have different boundaries than I do, but I do like to let my friends know, if you go quiet, if that quiet is what you need, just know that I'll be right here when you come back around. I'm not going to take that personally, and I know that that's something that might be helpful to you. Because what we don't want is for someone to feel obligated to be in a space communicating and connecting, and they really don't have it in them. It can really sour the relationship. And so what I'm focusing on when I choose activities with my friends is, if they are in a space where they want to talk and we feel chatty, then let's do an activity that allows us to do that. one of my friends that I play tennis with really frequently, sometimes we're really chatty. So sometimes we'll say, you know what, let's actually hike instead so that we can have room to talk. And vice versa, if a friend wants to be in your space or you want to be in their space, but nobody really feels like talking, well, maybe hanging out on the couch and watching Netflix and getting some ordered in food is the best thing to still feel less alone, but also not feel the pressure to pretend to be chipper, to pretend to be energized, to pretend that you have a lot to say. It's giving room for what our very human need is at that time. The other thing is the quality of conversations. I think it's a really nice thing to ask people, how are they doing or how are they feeling? But I can say from experience, even though I do like to ask my friends, when I'm not doing well and I'm not doing well for multiple days, I feel this heavy burden to try to say something that doesn't sound as bad, or I don't feel like lying, so I'm just going to avoid the question altogether. So that can be a tough one, and there's no formula for it, but just using a little intuition and figuring out if there are ways to check on people without asking that direct question that they may feel tired or obligated to answer and are just so tired of saying, oh, still haven't found a job yet, but I'm hanging in there. It's like, what do they say? And so sometimes how are you feeling can be good. Other times it can be, you already know things are bad. So it's asking, have you eaten? Were you able to get a little sunlight like you said? So yesterday you said you were thinking about trying stretching. Did that feel good for you, or do you need to maybe try something else? Sometimes just checking in with people when they're struggling can be a really great way to feel connected and to show that you were listening to them and that you're there for them. One thing that my friends do often for me is they remind me of things that previously worked that I mentioned to them. And so they'll say, oh, do you remember last time you told me that you felt really relaxed when you went to your favorite hiking spot? Do you feel up to doing that? And it's very different than you should go do that. It's, do you feel up to it? And it's like in those moments when I'm feeling very anxious or very sad, I sometimes forget the tools that have become effective. So part of the connection for me is knowing that the people in my life really listen and really remember the things that are important to me and the things that I say. So all in all, those are my tips for just considering the way we connect with others and maybe going deeper into connection with the questions we ask, the quality of conversation, and also just letting people know that they're never obligated to entertain us or to pretend that they're in a chipper mood when they're not, that they can just really show up and be who they are. That really can be a relief to a lot of people. This discussion was in no way meant to be condemning. It's just sort of a good time to step back and observe the way we interact and see if there's a way that can make us all feel a little more like we belong. Thanks for listening.